What is the creepiest thing your child has ever said to you? The responses were scary, spooky, disturbing and chilling. A friend of mine's child told him, "Daddy, I love you so much that I want to cut your head off and carry it around so I can see your face whenever I want." My 3-year-old daughter was standing over her newborn baby brother, looking at him. Then, she turned to me and said, "Daddy, it's a monster. We should bury it." My cousin used to freak her mum out as a child. Whenever her mum would ask her why she did something mean or wrong, she would whisper, "The devil told me to do it." I was babysitting for a little girl and she asked where I had parked my car. I pointed out the window to my car across the street. She looked at me and said, "Go to it without looking both ways." I asked her why and she replied, "I want to see someone die." One night, I was tucking in my 2-year-old son. He said, "Goodbye, Dad." I corrected him, "No, we say goodnight." He replied, "I know, but this time it's goodbye." I had to come back and check on him a few times during the night to make sure he was still there. My 3-year-old son was cuddling with his grandmother. He took her face in his hands, and stared straight into her eyes and said, "You're very old and you will die soon." Then he made a point of looking at the clock. My little girl went through a phase where she would just constantly say hi to things. Hi 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 hi. One day, it sounded strange, so I asked her, "What's that you're saying?" She turned to face me and just whispered, "Die die 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 die." My niece was sleeping over at my parents' house one night. She had all the lights on in the spare bedroom. I asked her if she was afraid of the dark, and she said, "No, I am afraid of what is in the dark." My 5-year-old daughter said, "Mommy, when you die I want to put you in a glass jar so I can keep you and see you forever." My 6-year-old son laughed and replied, "That's stupid. Where are you gonna find a jar that big?" My 3-year-old daughter was holding her newborn baby brother for the first time. She looked up at me and asked innocently, "So, I shouldn't throw him in the fire?" My sister was pregnant and we were having a conversation at the dining room table. My 4-year-old son asked my sister if there was a baby in her belly. She told him there was. He slid out of his chair and headed for the kitchen, saying, "We need to get it out. I'll go get the knife." When my son was little, I would sometimes hold him down and pretend to eat his face, saying, "Nom nom nom." One day, he said, "I'll never eat your face, Mommy. I'll cut it off and wear it as a mask." My 5-year-old cousin drew a picture of a hideous, black monster. Then, she looked up at me and said, "He told me to draw this. He's coming for you. You better hide." When I was about 3 years old, our cat had kittens, but they all died. I asked my father if we could make crosses for them, which he did. As he was making them I asked, "Aren't those too small?" "Dad, what do you mean?" "Me, aren't we going to nail them to them?" Several moments silence. "Dad, we're not going to do that." My mum loves to tell this story. Apparently when I was 5 or 6, I told her that aliens had stolen her real son and replaced him with me, an exact copy. I said that someday, I would return to my home planet, but she shouldn't be sad, because her real son was having a good life in our zoo. My little cousin was thrown out of a Catholic preschool because he took off his shoe and told one of the nuns, "Shut up or I'll take out your eye with my shoe." Because I'm the son of the devil, apparently that was the last straw. I was awoken from a deep sleep at around 6 a.m. My 4-year-old daughter was standing over me and her face was inches from mine. She looked right into my eyes and whispered, "I want to peel all your skin off." For a few seconds I was terrified. In my sleep-addled state, I didn't know if I was dreaming or what was going on. Then, I realized what she was talking about. I had been sunburned the previous week and my skin was starting to peel. My niece was sitting on the couch with a weird look on her face. I asked her what she was thinking about and she said, "I'm imagining the waves of blood rushing over me." As it turns out, they had just come back from a local science museum. There was an exhibit on the circulatory system of blood in the human body. My 3-year-old son was telling me there was a man in his room. "Mommy," he said, "the man has big yellow eyes and he is looking at you." I tried to tell him there was no man and my son just told me, "Oh, he is hiding now." 2 minutes later, he said, "Oh no Mommy, you made him very mad. Now he says he will come when you are sleeping." Sometime later, he told me, "I'm not going to be 4. I'm doing to die and you will put me down in the hole." Megan, I assured him that wasn't true and asked who had told him that. He got very quiet and replied, "The man told me, but I will be scared, so after 3 nights you will die too and come with me. I was in the basement of my friend's house with her 2-year-old son. He took my hand, led me over to a brick chimney that had a rusty metal door on it and said, "That's where the dead babies go." I was looking at houses with my brother and his 3-year-old son. As we passed the school, the little boy said, "If you buy a house here, that's where your kids will go to school." Then, we passed a pool and the little boy said, "And that's where your kids will go to the pool." Then, we passed a cemetery and he said, "And that's where you'll bury your kids." One night, when my daughter was 4, I overheard her talking in her room. I poked my head in and asked if she was talking to me. "No," she replied. "I was talking to the little boy who lives in my closet. He's dead." I jokingly asked my little cousin, "What's the best way to get a girlfriend?" His response was, "Tell her to be my girlfriend or she'll never see her parents again." One day, totally out of the blue, my 5-year-old son said, "Before I was born here, I had a sister, right? Her and my other mum are so old now. They were okay when the car was on fire, but I sure wasn't." One day, my 3-year-old son hugged my wife and said, very seriously, "Mom, I promise I won't ever chew on your bones." My 5-year-old daughter had night terrors and she would sometimes scream in her sleep. One night, I said, "Mom is here. It's okay." She looked right at me and screamed, "Mommy, but who is that behind you?" A few months ago, my 3-year-old daughter was playing outside in our backyard. My wife was sitting on the back step and my daughter came up and asked her if she could play with the little girl on our slide. My wife said, "I don't see any little girl," and my daughter said, "She's right over there on the slide." "Mum, can't I play with her?" my wife said. "I don't see anyone," but my daughter kept insisting, "She's on the slide and she is blue. Can I play with her?" My wife was freaked out, said, "Let's just go inside and get a snack." For the rest of the day, my daughter kept looking out the back door, telling my wife that the little blue girl was lonely. When my brother was very young, he was sleepwalking. My mum was trying to get him to go back to bed. He said, "I would, but the devil is behind you." One day, my 4-year-old son said, "My brain is telling me to do things I don't want to do." I just hope his brain wasn't telling him, "Burn them. Burn them all." As a child, I would tell my parents daily that they were not my real parents and that my real parents died in a train accident. At first, they thought it was cute, but after a few months of this, they had to put a stop to my story. Out of the blue, my 2-year-old daughter said, "If you're quiet, you'll stay alive." I still have no clue where that came from. My daughter and her friend were talking about dinosaurs. I asked her, "If you were a T-Rex, what would you eat?" She got very serious, looked me right in the eyes and said, "Children. I'd eat children." Last week, my 5-year-old son asked me, "What do you see through the black circles in my eyes when you're controlling me when I'm at school?" My 5-year-old son gave me a card he'd made at school. On the front, it said, "How you see yourself." He had drawn a picture of me walking in a meadow. I was surrounded by blue skies, a blazing sun, green grass and butterflies. There was a big smile on my face. Inside, it said, "How you really are." There was a picture of me in a jail cell, gripping the bars and crying. I work in a preschool. There is a small toy kitchen in our classroom that the kids use for playing house. There was one little girl who was playing with a baby, rocking it back and forth and singing to it. Suddenly, she shoved it into the toy oven, slammed the door shut, turned to me and said, "Sometimes bad babies go in timeout." My mother told me that when I was a little girl, I saw some guy at the grocery store and started screaming and crying. It was so bad we had to leave, and when we got back to the car, my mum asked what was wrong. I told her he took me away from my first mum and hid me under his floor and made me sleep for a long time until I woke up with my new mum. It totally freaked my mother out. My daughter told me that there is a woman in her bedroom who watches her and sleeps on the ceiling above her bed. She also says the woman doesn't like me and wants to eat my heart. A few days after my dad passed away, my mother and I were awoken in the middle of the night by a furious banging noise. We went downstairs to find my little sister desperately trying to open the back door, yelling, "He wants back in. We have to let him back in." We had a small fire in the backyard and my baby cousin picked up a branch, lit it on fire and stared at it for a few minutes, muttering, "Burn, burn, burn." Eventually, as the whole stick caught fire, he started laughing maniacally and yelling in a deep demonic voice, booing, booing, boo, and it was terrifying. My mother told me that, when I was a child, I asked her what it was like to die. When she said she didn't know, I told her not to worry because I'd find out when I was 21. My aunt was very sick and my wife and I were talking about the cost of making arrangements for the funeral. Our 4-year-old son walked in and said, "Why don't you just set her on fire?" As it turned out, that's how he thought cremation worked. We were collecting my mother-in-law at the airport. While we were waiting, my husband picked up our son and joked about tossing him over the railing. On the way home in the car, our son spent the next 3 hours making a booklet titled, "All the Times My Dad Has Tried to Kill Me." There were illustrations showing him in all sorts of peril, including being flushed down the toilet by my husband. My mother-in-law was horrified. I was making dinner and my 5-year-old niece casually walked through the kitchen and said, "I'll get you, and I'll make it look like a bloody accident." It scared the heck out of me, but later I found out she was quoting a line from The Cat in the Hat. I asked my 3 kids what they wanted to do when they grew up. My 10-year-old said, "I want to be a teacher." My 8-year-old said, "I want to be a writer." My 6-year-old said, "I want to run the machine that cuts the heads off chickens." I was giving my 6-year-old daughter a bath and she a couple of Barbies in the tub with her. One of the Barbies had no head. The head was floating in the water. I asked her to reattach the head because it was creepy. She responded, "Why, Mum? It's not real. If it was real, the bath would be full of blood, and that would be creepy." One night, I was reading my 3-year-old niece a bedtime story and I fell asleep. When I woke up, it was dark and eerily silent. There was a night light on. I turned over and saw my niece. Her eyes were wide open and she was staring at me. Then, she whispered, "How did you get out of your box?" I asked my nephew what he was drawing and he replied, "A skeleton making machine." On further inspection I saw that he hadn't drawn a skeleton making machine, but rather a flesh removal machine, complete with screaming naked men and a channel for the blood. Creepy. My wife and I were giving our daughter a bath one night, when all of a sudden, she said, "You humans brought me here." It took us 4 months to figure out that it was a line she heard in a movie. Late one night, I was sitting at my friend's kitchen table when her daughter walked into the kitchen and said, "Mommy, when I was older I crashed the car and died. Can I have something to drink?" My friend calmly gave her daughter a glass of milk and sent her off to bed. It gave me the chills, but my friend didn't want to talk about it. She started crying and told me never to bring it up again. When I was 6 years old, we moved house. I said, "My mother, the lady who used to live here, told me that she hates the wallpaper and you are covering up her note." She just thought it was childish rambling and forgot all about it. 12 years later, my mother was redecorating the house. She took down the wallpaper in the attic and found a suicide note scratched into the wall. When my mother was pregnant, my little brother came into the room and pointed a Nerf gun at her stomach. "Oh, no, don't shoot me," my mum said playfully. "Don't worry, Mum," he replied. "I'm not trying to kill you. I'm just trying to kill the baby." A friend of mine brought her 3-year-old son over to my apartment. I asked him what his favorite holiday was. He replied, "I like Halloween because I like candy and death." I was minding my own business, working in the garage, when the door creaked open and my 2-year-old son popped his head in and asked, "Daddy, are you dead yet?" I replied, "No," and then he just slowly closed the door. I was at a friend's house when his 4-year-old cousin was getting ready to go to bed. He walked around, giving everyone a good night hug. I said to him, "Sweet dreams." He stopped at the top of the stairs, turned around and with a very serious face said, "I'll control your dreams and make them nightmares." My son was 4 and his sister was almost 2. I had to go to a meeting and I couldn't read them a bedtime story. I promised I would read them too the following night to make up for it. My son said, "It's okay, Mum, Auntie Tracy will read to us." I felt the hairs go up on the back of my neck. "Who?" I asked. "Auntie Tracy, Mum," he said. "She looks just like you. After we go to bed she reads and sings to us." I had never told them that I was an identical twin and my sister died at birth. Her name was Tracy. My wife was making a sandwich for our 4-year-old son. He was watching her really intently and she asked what he was doing. He replied, "I'm watching you make a sandwich, so I know how to do it when you die." While I was cooking dinner one evening, my 4-year-old daughter came in and wanted to help. "You're not going to touch the stove, are you?" I asked. No, she replied. Do you know why you shouldn't touch the stove? I asked. She looked at me and, in a very serious tone, replied, because I might get burned and die and then you'd have to eat me. I was blowing my nose into a tissue and my 6-year-old daughter asked if she could see it. I said no and she responded with, I promise I won't eat it.